Meanwhile, while people are joining in, let me welcome you all for the first day session. Unfortunately, I was not able to be available yesterday, so we shall consider this as a first session, and I wish you uh, have a great time with this course and take the most out of it. And let us start with a brief introduction about myself. I'll let you talk about yourself for a minute or 30 seconds. So I know that which background you're coming from and what's your expectation of this course. So myself, Azad, and I'm with Network Journey for quite some time. I have around six plus years of experience in network and security. So I've been teaching Palo Alto for quite some time with Network Journey, and this course is going to be about PCNSA, NSC, and Panorama. So you will learn from basics towards how you could manage an enterprise infrastructure with multiple firewalls involving Panorama, where you manage all the firewalls through Panorama basically, and that's going to be the last part of the course. And added to that, you will also have the automation stuff coming in, how to manage the firewalls config through REST API, which will also be at the end of the session. So stay tuned for that. And to start with, I'll let you all talk about yourself for about 30 to 60 seconds. So we shall get started after waiting for a few more minutes for others to join in. So yeah, any one of you, Teja or Sarath or Farooq, welcome everyone, and any one of you can start. You can just brief about yourself and which background you're from and what's your experience, and yeah.
This is Farooq. Actually, I'm working in Saudi Arabia and working in one of the largest company in Saudi Arabia, Saudi Electricity Company, as a network engineer and security, internet security engineer. So most of the time, I work with semantic blue coat devices, and now in my company before we use Cisco Firepower. So now we my company they changed with Palo Alto. So now for me it is actually newbie for the Palo Alto.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's why I actually want to take the training, and because now it is my job needed.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Farooq. So you have a fair bit of experience with Cisco FTD, and you are new to Palo Alto. Is it what you're saying?
Yes. But I
Okay.
have already, experience in Juniper as well. Okay, SRX, and a little bit, experience on Cisco devices for the firepower as well.
Okay, cool. So can we have the next person, Sarath or Teja, to give a brief and we should get going? Yes.
Yeah, good morning to all. Myself is Sharath. I worked as a network engineer for last 4.5 years. I have experience in switches and routers, but I don't have in firewalls. I am looking to learn the firewalls for this course.
Okay, cool. So
thank you.
Hi everyone, this is Teja. So coming to myself, I'm having over 5 years experience in the voice domain of networking. I worked on different voice phone systems, Cisco, Polycom, Cloud Foods, Avaya as well. And I have theoretical knowledge of the routing switching and a very little, like 3 to 4 months of experience working on the Checkpoint and Juniper firewalls.
Okay.
I was just doing some rules configuring at the time that I was working with the firewalls, Checkpoint back in 2016. But after that, mostly I am working in the voice domain. So recently I am I got an opportunity to work on the Palo firewalls. So I joined this course to get some knowledge.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks for the introduction or the brief. So I'll just take one more minute. I'll just check with my backend team if there are any more candidates to join, and we shall get started. Just give me, I think one more person has joined, if I'm right. Someone named iPhone. Okay. So I'm just asking him or her to unmute. So
Yes.
hello, Mano. Yeah, I was not able to get your name through your
Yes, no problem. Yeah, my name is Maurice. Yeah.
Hi, Marisa. Yeah, so since you've joined about 5 minutes later than us, so I was talking about myself, and I was asking about your background, so I know which background you're from and what's your experience and what your expectation out of this course. So to introduce myself to you, myself Azad, and I will be your instructor for this course, and this is going to cover PCNSE, PCNSA, and Panorama, along with managing Panorama or Palo Alto Firewall through REST API automation. So it's going to be about 40 sessions long. That's what I have planned for. It might go beyond 5 days or 6 days more. So depending upon how the class goes. So yeah, I just let you talk about yourself for 30 seconds and we shall get started with.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've been in the networking industry for quite a bit, 18 for the last 18 years, and but I'm more focused on the network security engineering over the last 6-7 years, and been working with Cisco, Fortigate, but Palo Alto recently. So I have a little bit of experience in Palo Alto firewalls and Panorama. I already passed the PCNSA, but again, my main focus is, my expectation would be to get more, hands-on skills and knowledge from you guys and be able to pass the PCNSE. So that's my main purpose on this training. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Cheers. Okay, I'll just take a minute to check if any other candidate is yet to join, and we shall get started for the day. And this is going to be a short session since it's the first day. I'll just consolidate how many people are in here, who are expected in here. And from today, it's going to be a full-fledged 1-hour session. So just give me 1 second to mute myself and come back. Okay, looks like that is all, and we shall get started. We can back up people who are joining if they are joining in case. So, okay. So this is going to be the setup that I have planned to walk you through in this session. So this is with respect to Palo Alto alone. So going forward for Panorama, it's going to be happening at the final 4 days session. In fact, at the final 8 day session, where 4 will be for API automation and 4 I'll be covering as part of um, Panorama. So that's going to be a different one since it's involving licenses. So I am using this virtual lab just to cover Palo Alto firewall and related concepts. For Panorama, it's going to be a different setup. It's going to be a simple setup. In fact, I'll just be covering you on how to manage a Panorama and Palo Alto firewall and how to configure them, toggle between templates and device groups, and much more than how others would do that I could promise. So let's get started. I have just planned to keep this session simple because, as I said, I might have few more people joining in tomorrow, so I don't want to get into too much details of today's session. So to keep it simple, I'll just walk you through on what is a firewall. For those who are already into working with firewalls, this is going to be a pretty simple one, but considering uh, each and every audience in this session, I will just take some time to make sure they understand what is a firewall and what it does, and what is next generation firewall, and how is it different from normal layer 4 firewall. And then we'll just talk about Palo Alto features today, and we might be talking about packet flow of it, maybe if we have some time left. I think we have about 45 minutes left, and we'll see if we could cover all of this. I think definitely the 3 of them, but the 4th one depending upon how the time permits us. So yes, let's get started. So to make you understand what a firewall would do, I'll just make a simple diagram that would instruct you maybe a user present here at the untrust zone, and he's trying to do something or trying to access something towards the corporate network, which is on the inside. And so let's take this as the untrust, and this is the trust zone, and this is a router. So just having a router connected to ISP or terminating your corporate network from your public cloud, it is just going to do IP filtering. So what a router could do is basically it could route the traffic. Second thing it could do is it could do some path monitoring through SLA, IP SLA. And the main thing regarding security, to the minimum or to the maximum it could do is filter traffic using IPv4 source, destination, and port numbers, right? So this is something that to the maximum a router could do. And same, more or less the same with L4 firewall. So to take as an example, we could take ASA. So what an ASA could again do is it will have MFA. MFA is something it will have something called layer 4 level inspection, where it will inspect the traffic inbound and or I could say statefully inspect. So the difference that this layer 4 firewall like ASA or the router that is placed at the edge of the network would do is it basically would do a stateful inspection. So what is a stateful inspection? Let's say there is a traffic coming in. Let me use a different color. So there is a traffic coming in from the user, maybe of port 10. And he's going to some public IP in the internet, 8.8.8.9 maybe. So if in case it's a router, it is going to expect the return traffic also to be allowed if it is blocked explicitly on the ACL. So router is basically going to block everything, I mean, allow everything. If we are having an ACL that restricts, having an implicit deny or whatever, it's going to expect the return traffic to be allowed. So in this case of layer 4 firewall like ASA, let's say there is a traffic coming in from this IP towards this IP, and let's imagine this as ASA. We are not if we are let's say we are allowing this IP to access this IP or any IP in the internet through any policy that is in ASA. Let's say it is through ACL applied to an interface inbound or outbound. We don't have to probably allow the return traffic if that protocol is inspected in the ASA firewall. So basically, if the forward traffic for that connection is allowed, the return traffic coming from this 8.8.8.9 towards 10.0.0.0.1 is automatically allowed statefully. So the state of the connection is tracked. So let's say this is the forward traffic, this is the return traffic, and if this guy is allowed, the return traffic is also allowed in a layer 4 firewall like ASA, unlike routing. That is a router. So that's the basic difference between layer 4 firewall like ASA or using a router. And other factors as well applies, like we in layer 4 firewall we inspect based on protocol. We restrict traffic based on port numbers, and we have zones that's defined on every interface and stuff like that. So that this router, which is here placed on the internet facing or segregating our corporate network and the public internet, doesn't have all this. It just has a basic routing feature, and if in case we use ACL, we use ACL to restrict or allow traffic, right? So that's about a layer 4 level firewall and a router. Let's consider something more on the layer 4 firewall here. So we have the same setup in this case. Let's say we are comparing a layer 4 firewall towards a next generation firewall, which is layer 7. So it could be any next generation firewall. So as I said, what layer 4 firewall would do is statefully inspect the traffic, but looking at the OSA layer, it just does a layer 4 level inspection, which is it inspects traffic only based upon port numbers and protocols. And this next generation firewall, presumably Palo Alto in our case, does layer 7 level inspection in a way that it inspects the application level. Like say we are accessing port number 22, irrespective of the port number, it makes sure what's the application exactly we are accessing using something called application ID, which we will be looking at in great details with the lab. So it does layer 7 level inspection, and this one word itself says it inspects up to layer 7. So it's just not inspects only layer 7, up to layer 7, which is it takes care of layer 3. As always, it's a router, I mean it's a routing device, L3 device, so it takes care of layer 3, it takes care of layer 4. It also has a separate field in the security policy section where we define allow or deny the security traffic through security policy. We have a separate field for layer 4, which is service port. And layer 7, obviously it inspects at layer 7 level using app ID, and it uses something called content ID to inspect antivirus, anti-malware, and other threats. So these all will be coming into greater details in future, but the main difference I wanted to tell you was it inspects only up to layer 4 level in the ASA, this one up to layer 7. Going down, it's again, if we are considering Palo Alto, it has many other features. That's what we're going to talk about next. About the feature of Palo Alto and how do we compare Palo Alto with other checkpoint firewall or Fortigate firewall in general. So since someone told they have worked with Fortigate before, so I don't see much difference with respect to Palo Alto or Fortigate in terms of performance, but definitely in terms of cost, Forti is cheaper. But not just because of that, people go towards Fortigate. If they consider money as a big barrier, they choose Fortigate. It also provides a competitive level of security. But there are many reasons that they go for Palo Alto too. I have specifically seen, working with Palo Alto, I've seen support plays a major role where people take Palo Alto's precedence over Fortigate. And the way they have designed the Panorama over FortiManager. FortiManager is again a version of Fortigate where that is a competitive product they have launched for Panorama, where Panorama and Fortigate both does the same job, but Panorama I feel does a little bit better than Fortigate. And in terms of security, or I said cost level of Fortigate is cheaper than Palo Alto. So how they define the level of how it's charged is the Mbps of traffic that's protected. So each different level of product that you purchase in Palo Alto has different level of connections that it could support, and thereby the price or cost also varies, right? Coming down, it also has all the, I mean, Fortigate also has all the features that Palo Alto has, like App ID. It also does content inspection. One big jump of Palo Alto over Fortigate is something called Wildfire. So Wildfire is something which takes care of zero-day attacks. Let's say if there is an attack happening, let's say there is a phishing email sent to a user, and the user is prone to that, and he clicks that email, and the traffic goes out through Palo Alto to take some data out of it, or to send some data from the user towards the sender, that is the attacker. That's called a zero-day attack. So if that pattern of attack is not seen before, Palo Alto considers it to be a zero-day attack. It can be in any of the form that we could think of. So what it does in that case is it has something called Sandbox Signatures in Palo Alto Cloud. And in the sandbox, it has its own signatures that identifies the traffic to be a threat, or the pattern of traffic to be a threat. If it identifies it to be a threat, it shares it with the Palo Alto, all the Palo Alto firewalls that's having Wildfire signatures. Which doesn't have Wildfire signatures, we can't help it. We the company has to purchase a license, so they avail this feature. So what it does is, the Palo Alto firewall, once it receives the traffic from the user, it checks the Wildfire signature, updated signature updates available on its device, and if it doesn't find a threat or some form of pattern-based attack that the Wildfire signature could match, it sends it to the Palo Alto cloud or Palo Alto update server, or the sandbox, which would check again if the pattern of traffic is identified already, and it will be checking with its own signatures. And if it finds it to be a threat, and if it's a zero-day attack which has not been identified before, it goes back and sends the updates to all the firewalls which is registered with the Wildfire, so they are aware of it, and the next user who is supposed to be infected will not be infected. So before that, the updates are all shared to the Palo Alto firewalls, which has the Wildfire signatures to it, Wildfire licenses to it, sorry. So in this way, the first user gets infected, but the user who is supposed to be infected, if in the absence of Wildfire, will be protected, and thereafter all the firewalls which has Wildfire license available with it and sees this pattern of traffic will immediately be blocked right there, and the traffic will not even be sent out from the Palo Alto firewalls towards the untrust or towards the attacker. So in that way, except the first sender, first infected user of that attack, everyone will be saved, and everyone will be saved from the attack that the attacker is trying to throw towards the network, right? Any questions so far? Anyone? Okay, I see something in chat. Okay. So anyone who has any questions, or we shall move on.
Sir, one question.
Yeah.
So whenever some virus attacks, a new virus attacks, so it will store that information in the sandbox signatures of the wildfire, and then it will send updates, right?
So, so as I said, what happens is, now let me quickly take. So one more thing about Palo Alto over Fortigate. I was comparing the performance, but from the user's perspective, that is the user in the sense the administrator ourselves or the engineers ourselves. So when we are using a product, we also expect the product to be user friendly, and we also expect the documentation to be more precise. So I hope most of us worked with Cisco here. So we all know how Cisco's documentation would be. It would be very vast if we take a specific uh, uh, topic that we need to go through or implement new or know about. There'll be a lot of information in the Cisco's website, official website, and it'll be difficult for us to follow as a beginner of that specific topic. So in Palo Alto's case, the documentation officially provided by Palo Alto will be very straightforward. Let's say we are supposed to go through a specific feature that's introduced by Palo Alto, or we are not aware and we are going through new. The documentation will be very precise and to the point. It will be very straightforward, so we follow them without any hassle or without any support that we could take from anyone else. That's the document would be enough for us to achieve the topic or get that feature understood. So that's one big thing about Palo Alto. They have their documentation prepared very well. So they have the documentation in, say, two ways. So one prepared by the Palo Alto officials itself, and the next one is the knowledge base. So there they will discuss the issues that we have, and if there is a deployment level talks going on, everything will be available in knowledge base. And Palo Alto docs is again another type of documentation that we have. So coming to your question, so we can take this, or maybe something else, which is, yeah. So what Wildfire does basically is, we are sitting inside a corporate office as a user, and let's say we get an email saying click this website for some offer or something which attracts our eyes, and a normal user would definitely go ahead and try to use that and click and go in and see what's actually in there, right? So after you click that, the traffic, if the Palo Alto is deployed, we will basically see the traffic flowing through Palo Alto. The Palo Alto will be inspecting the traffic. Let's get this over here itself. So here is a Palo Alto firewall, and let's say it is expecting, sorry about that. Yeah, let's say this is a Palo Alto firewall, and it's receiving a traffic from the user from the corporate network, and the user is trying to access something which is malicious, and the Palo Alto tries to inspect that, but it doesn't have. So basically, the Palo Alto firewall, which has the Wildfire license to it already, let's say the Palo Alto sends an update to, this is a fact, if let's say the Palo Alto's sandbox or update server will send the updates to the Palo Alto devices that is registered with Wildfire license every 5 minutes, right? So what it achieves by doing this is, every 5 minutes whatever the new update that is available with regards to Wildfire is updated to the device. And let's say the traffic comes in from the user and he is trying to access that website and hits a firewall from the inside interface and goes outbound. The traffic is inspected by Palo Alto's Wildfire signatures that the Palo Alto's having with it. Let's say the update number or something, let's keep it as 105. In that, it doesn't find this pattern of attack happening. So what it does is it goes to Wildfire. It sends it to Wildfire. The Wildfire checks with its own updated signature, and it checks with this Sandbox as well. Sandbox as in it sends the same traffic as a user. As the user sends, it sends the same type of traffic with that Sandbox being the user. So it proxies a user and sends this traffic, that same traffic that the user is trying to or the same website that the user is trying to access. It will try to access that and see if that is an infected one or not. And with that result, it updates its Wildfire signatures and thereby updates all the Palo Alto firewalls that is registered with the Wildfire signature. Thereby, all the firewalls will know that this pattern of traffic or this type of traffic is an infected one and it should be blocked or not. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, okay. So whenever the firewall finds some kind of malicious traffic, instead of transmitting that directly, it sends to the Wildfire cloud, thereafter to Sandbox, and Sandbox will be communicating as a user with the particular destination. And if it finds malicious, it will block them.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So in this case, let's say our updates that we have received are outdated. Let's say the update version is 110 and we have 100 and we are not updated with the Wildfire version content update. We will send it to the Wildfire cloud and it will check with its Sandbox and its own signatures. And if it finds something malicious, it sends it to your firewall as well as all the firewalls and make sure the next traffic coming in with the same pattern is not infecting a user.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Okay, cool. So, right, we were talking about the Palo Alto firewall versus Fortigate, and we shall then now talk about features. So coming to the feature, so this is a next generation firewall. I told you the difference between next generation and layer 4 firewall. It works on layer 7 inspection, inspects up to layer 7. And coming down, it's having a feature called Wildfire. So I'll also tell you there is a different way of deploying Wildfire. So we'll have a Wildfire session separately coming up in the future lessons. So I have just told you what's Wildfire and what Palo Alto does with it. It's all an automated process. So once we have the Wildfire license installed, we are not going to do anything. But apart from that, we'll have to know how differently a Wildfire deployment can be done on a Palo Alto firewall, so which will be discussed later. So for now, I am just stopping here with what is Wildfire. So the next one is App ID. So App ID is, again, I'll just talk a little bit about App ID. App ID is again a separate topic that we'll be going through. Talking about App ID is in general is something like this that I could draw maybe. So let's say this guy is the user, and we have our Palo Alto firewall here, and we have our server in the untrust. So when traffic comes from this user towards the Palo Alto firewall, so we have something called 6-tuple information, right? So what all we will be expecting for a traffic to pass through, maybe a source IP and destination IP, source port, destination port, and probably that is all. Yeah. So and rest all are supporting configuration that we should have, like routing and other stuff. But these 4 are the simple information that we would require. Maybe Palo Alto is a zone-based firewall. We might require source zone and destination zone.
Source MAC address.
Yeah, that's for layer 2. Yes, that covers the 6-tuple source MAC and destination MAC. So these informations are required for a traffic to get past the Palo Alto firewall towards the server untrust. So when I use, let's take source port and destination port. That's what I wanted to talk about in this. Let's say source port, as you know, will be a random port 1 2 3 4 5, and destination port is 80. So he's actually trying to access port number 80 towards this server. So irrespective of what port this user is trying to access, so irrespective of what port he's trying to access, so in this case it's 80. The Palo Alto firewall, let's say we have our Palo Alto update server here, right? So irrespective of the port number this guy is trying to access, that is 80. So with the port number 80, we will come to know, we will just guess the application, or say that the application is HTTP, or the protocol is HTTP, not the application. So protocol is HTTP, and we never know what is the inbuilt application that the traffic is riding on, right? So what Palo Alto does is, this is again a difference between next generation firewall and what you call it as a layer 4 firewall. Yeah. So here we have port number 80, and the traffic hits the firewall. What it does is it checks the application signatures. So this is again retrieved from the Palo Alto update server. So it retrieves the application signatures that the Palo Alto has, and will try to identify the application. Most of the time the application will be identified, unless it's not a manually built application from the user or the developer. Most of the times the application signatures that the Palo Alto update server would provide to the device will be helpful to identify the application, the actual application that the protocol is riding on. So in this way, we will come to know, irrespective of the port number, it will come to know which application is basically used for that specific connection, to go and fetch the information from the server and come back.
Like in the case of 80 port, it will be decoding that with HTTP.
HTTP is again a protocol. So if I have to explain you better, so I'm going in here and maybe typing Facebook. So as soon as I type Facebook and hit enter, and I'm going in here, so with only the protocol inspection, you will be only able to identify this to be a HTTPS connection, right?
Yeah.
If your firewall is actually working on protocol inspection and doesn't work on application level inspection, and is not able to identify what the application of the traffic is, it will only identify this to be an HTTPS application.
Okay.
And if this HTTPS application needs to be identified, HTTPS protocol needs to be identified as an application, it needs some signatures that Palo Alto would have. That signature will be useful in identifying this as what application it is and what level of application it is. Let's say in Palo Alto, sorry, in Facebook, as an for keeping Facebook as an example, you get inside Facebook until you reach the Facebook website and go in after login. The application will be identified as Facebook. After you get in, you know that Facebook has in different, I mean, many of us doesn't know, but Facebook has Facebook chat, video, messenger. So different level of application that it could work on. So Palo Alto also has a feature where it I'll also switch on this device so I could show you something as a GUI to start with. Let it switch on, or maybe just give me 1 second. So I'm basically connecting our own internet connection to the Palo Alto firewall, so we don't need to have a PC that consumes 4 GB of RAM. So what this does is, if you have not used DVNG, it's going to take DHCP IP address and assign it to the Palo Alto firewall from our own local network, and we can access the device on the browser, local browser itself, right? So I was talking about Palo Alto acting as and its application ID feature. So it is basically going to identify the exact application that the Palo Alto or the user will be accessing, irrespective of the port number that he will be using, right?
Oh.
And it will also identify the application jump. So first the application will be SSL, considering Facebook as an example. Then the application will jump from SSL to Facebook after you log in. Let's say you're getting into chat, you will identify the application to be Facebook chat, and you are getting into a video call and it's identified to be a different application again. So it will identify application to a level where the user would use it. So imagine the level how the Palo Alto or any next generation firewall would work compared to any layer 4 level inspected firewall. So the layer 4 inspection stops right here, 80 HTTP. That's all. So Palo Alto goes right away to identify up to which application sub application that you use of that specific traffic. So that's how app ID works. So how this is happening is it actually is going to contact Palo Alto update server to fetch the application ID signatures. It's going to fetch the application ID signatures, and with that signature, it will have signatures for most of the applications that user would use. MSQL DB, you might think of web browsing, you might think of SSL, whatever application you would think of, most of it, 99% would be available. For which is not available and we are aware of, we can use application override policy match. We can have a custom level application identification done through a policy, and that could be imposed to the security policy so that application name is identified. So this will again be covered. The app custom based application is again covered in detail. So I'll just stop with how it works with application ID and how it identifies the application and from where it fetches the information. I hope this is clear for you.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So apart from this, it has something called content ID, content inspection, where it inspects antivirus, file blocking, anti-malware, URL filtering based upon the URL, and much more. So few of this lab, so as you know, threat is not something we could recreate. I am working on my labs to the maximum to recreate all of this, so that you know how do you implement all this and identify a threat and mitigate a threat, how to allow a threat. Let's say if traffic is identified to be a threat as per the Palo Alto's threat inspection, but you want to exempt that threat because your lab team or someone is using it for testing purpose, and this needs to be allowed for them, or this specific traffic or destination needs to be accessed for them to work on their labs and implement it, work on their lab setup or something, whatever. So how to do a threat exemption? For that, we need to first work on how to make a Palo Alto identify a threat, recreate that situation, and then exempt the threat. So I'll try to recreate all of this real time. Probably it will be possible, and rest others are obviously possible. I'll just try to recreate all of this content inspection thing and try to present it to you when we are doing this lab. So that's the reason I've had all this lab at the last, so that I'll get a lot of time to get this implemented real time. So it's again going to inspect antivirus, file blocking. That's what type of file has to be allowed and what type of file has to be blocked, and anti-malware, URL filtering, DDoS prevention, zone protection, and all of the stuff. So we will just group all of this and present it onto the security policy we are going to use, and that specific traffic hitting the security policy will inspect all of this before it's allowed or denied, right? So that's in short about content inspection. So what rest I could talk about its features, maybe I can say Panorama. Panorama, if people who have attended my lab, I have showed a demo session. I've showed a simple lab about my Panorama that I have explained. People who have not, probably I'll just keep it short for today. Panorama, it's a centralized management system to manage multiple firewalls with a single GUI interface. So basically, if I have to take you to a schema where I can draw and show you. So you have, let's say, 3, 4, 5 firewalls, and you have one Panorama, and let's say you have all LAN or users connected behind this firewall, considering all these as a different site location. So all the Palo Alto firewalls will be connected to this Panorama, not physically, yeah, obviously physically, but through a port number. There is a procedure that you should follow for you to connect or register this device to a Panorama. So some configurations here and some configuration on this specific device. Post that, all this configuration that you could do on this 5 firewalls can be managed on this single device. Right? So it has something called device group, and templates. So if you ask about why we are using Panorama, I could say let's say you have for example, you have a server that is located here, and all these guys have to access this server, and it's coming to hit a Palo Alto firewall maybe, and it's hitting the same zone or same interface. You had to write a rule saying from source zone untrust to destination zone. Maybe it's running on a DMVPN, destination zone DMVPN towards this server's IP for a specific port that it's listening on, allow. So you had to write all the 5 firewalls the same rule and then say allow this traffic. Instead, you go here, go to the specific device group where all the firewalls are compiled in, write one single rule and push it to all 5 firewalls, and job done. So this is for 5 firewalls I'm talking about, one single rule I'm talking about. But consider a number of centralized infrastructures that you have. Let's say you have a centralized WLC, and all the site locations, AP, subnet are supposed to reach this WLC, and you allow it through a single rule instead of allowing it on all 20-25 firewalls that you have. You have a syslog server, you have a DHCP server, DNS server, all centralized. But if you don't have a Panorama, you are going to waste your time by writing a rule on each of the firewall, and it's going to take a lot of time for managing as well. Let's say you are migrating your server from one location to another, and if the DHCP server is getting migrated from on-premises to cloud, with respect to the security policy, you are supposed to write one single rule if you are using a Panorama, and just edit that single rule for this migration purpose. If not, you got to go and edit it on every other firewall. So this is something that Panorama would provide. There are many other advantages that we will be discussing that Panorama could provide, but in short, this is something that you should be aware of if you wanted to know how a Panorama works, or how to get the firewall connected to Panorama, how to push a policy from Panorama. There is a difference how you push a policy from a Panorama to the devices, and how to commit a change on the local firewall. So committing a change in local firewall is just clicking on commit, and it gets committed. On the Panorama, it's a little bit different. You got to select the device you wanted to commit that or push the configuration to, and you got to select the device group config or template config you wanted to push it to. So I'll just show you how the Palo Alto firewall will look like. May know if any of you have joined my demo session that I've taken, or all of you have joined, or anyone missed it, or may know if anyone have joined. Yeah,
I joined the first session, like the Panorama session.
Okay, Panorama session, you have missed it, is it?
Yeah, it's the second session.
Okay. So that's where we discussed a bit about Panorama, and I showed them the device, how it looks like, and how we work on it. I showed them a glimpse of the lab that we'll be going through. So not a problem, it will all be discussed again. So if you see, I have just switched on this firewall just to show you how the interface would look like, and the network that I've connected is the management cloud, the local management cloud. So I've got an IP from the local management cloud itself. So let me try to log into that. So the password initially would be admin and admin. So when we start configuring, we'll have a standard password that is defined in here, right? So it's asking us to configure. Let's do it right away. So for all the devices, it's going to be network journey at 123 with n caps. So I'm just going to set it that way. All right. So I guess it's almost time. It's 6 minutes past our time. So I'll just show you what are the tabs that we see in Palo Alto, and we shall wrap this session up. All right. So we have dashboard where we have some general information about the device, about the hardware or the VM. So device name, its IP, and which network it is in, its gateway, and which model number, and its version it's running on. So the version it's running on, and coming down to this tab, it's going to tell you the graphical view of how the traffic is, graphical view of monitoring the traffic, basically. So since there is no traffic going through this firewall, it's not connected to anything right now. It's not showing up anything. It's just basically for exporting. If you want to export, you can export it to a PDF or a Excel document. So it's just going to tell what's the network activity, how many bytes of data has been passed, and if there is a user ID enabled, it's going to tell what's the user that's connected, how much of traffic he has passed, and how many sessions are currently available on the device, how many sessions it's passing through. Whole lot of information that you could see here. It's just for monitoring purpose. So monitor tab again, this is where you see the traffic log, threat log, URL filtering log, Wildfire submission, and you have something called user ID here where you define user ID, and the user ID logs are available here. And if any tunnel traffic is inspected, that's over here. And system logs, whatever happens on the firewall. So you see there is no traffic on the firewall, but still you have some logs here. That's because it's going to inspect or log the traffic that's destined to the firewall. So whatever the traffic that's destined to the firewall, it's going to whatever is happening on the firewall, it's going to log it in here. So we have accessed monitoring tab a while before. That's been given here. So we have logged in using admin. We have authenticated from this IP address. Maybe this should be my IP. Logged out of web from this IP. That's when I changed my password. Password changed. Authenticated, the initial authentication I did. So these are all the port numbers. So link change. So whatever happens on the device, on the box, is being logged here on the system logs. So if there is any alarm that's, let's say, there is overutilization on an interface, or the interface is physically down, those alarms would be happening here. Packet capture is same as what you do with Cisco. You could just set up a few filters, source IP, source interface, source port, destination port, and switch on the filter and take a packet capture, switch on the capture, and just you would have the Wireshark files created here, and you could just open and inspect the traffic or evaluate the traffic or troubleshoot. You can use it for troubleshooting purpose. So a whole lot of stuff available here. Session browser is this is for traffic log. This is for session log. So basically, forming a session is something which happens after a TCP handshake is complete. So if a complete connection is formed for the specific traffic, that would appear here in the session browser. The forward and reverse traffic of it would be appearing here, over here. So that's about session browser. Policies, you create security policy, NAT policy, policy-based forwarding, decryption, tunnel inspection, application override, as I told you. Objects, all type of objects that you would configure. The content ID, I told you that configuration applies here. Network tab, all regards to interface zones, VLANs, routing information, the tunnel configs that you do, and all network profile. So interface management, zone protection profile, the phase 1 and phase 2 configs of IPsec, all is done here. And the device config is basically configuring the management interface, taking backups, shutting down the device, and you could configure the users and certificates here, and server profiles here. So if you're integrating an LDAP or TechAx server, Radius server, you could configure that profile here and integrate that to the LDAP server or whatever. So support here is where you generate a tech support file. So this is a log file that gets generated that will give you all the information. Probably if you're opening a TAC case, you got to give this information first up to the TAC engineer. So this is where you see all the licenses that's been signed with Palo Alto. Dynamic updates. This is where you check for updates if you need any software to be upgraded. So just it's simple one-step process where you check for the updated version, download the version, install the version, 2 clicks, and reload the firewall. The upgrade is done. So it's pretty simple, not so complicated to upgrade the firewall, unless and until it's in a cluster, active passive cluster or active active cluster, like you see here. It needs some care to be taken when you're doing an upgrade onto a cluster firewall. Otherwise, it's just a 2-step process here. So we'll just wrap it up right now. We can probably continue tomorrow. I'll just start with how to configure a management interface, and how do you configure a user on the Palo Alto firewall, and thereby getting started with the configs like interface configuration, VLAN configuration slowly. So if you have any questions, I'll let you ask for another couple of minutes, and we could wrap it up right there. Okay, so I shall expect you tomorrow around 8:30 sharp. So we don't have to delay anymore. Today we had a delay of about 15 minutes, so I just covered a 15 minutes extra. Tomorrow it will be sharp 8:30 to 9:30. So we also would take time to work on other stuff of ours. We can just make sure we stick to that 1 hour we are promised of, right? So if you don't have any further questions, we shall wrap it up for the day, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.